thirsty? Here, have some water. Gross, right? This is what our fresh drinking water is going to look like in a couple of years thanks to ChatGPT and other big AI companies.
AI used more water this year than every single water bottling company.
I can't live in my home with half of my home functioning and no water, and I can't drink the water.
How much water does AI waste on a daily basis?
One ChatGPT request, that's the equivalent of pouring out a bottle of water and powering a light bulb for 15 minutes.
Does AI actually use so much water like people claim? Well, before we get into this topic, let us discuss and define what AI actually means. AI for short means artificial intelligence. It is a technology that enables computers to perform tasks that would normally require human intelligence. This task could include generating photos, solving problems, coding, and understanding language. So, for example, when you ask ChatGPT a question and it answers you, that right there is AI. When your Netflix recommends a movie or a show for you, that is also AI. When Google Maps predicts what part of the road has high traffic, that is also AI. You probably use AI every single day of your life, but you probably do not realize it. When you ask Siri to set an alarm for you or perform tasks, that is also AI. So then how does AI use water? What is it for? Why would a piece of software need water? Well, to understand this, I need to tell you about a data center because that is where the water usage actually comes from. A data center is a building that is filled with powerful computers called servers. They store and process and deliver digital information. So think of it this way. When you ask ChatGPT a question, that answer doesn't just come from your phone, right? Well, your phone sends the question over the internet and it travels to a data center that could be thousands of miles away. So inside that data center, powerful computers process your request, then it generates an answer and it sends it back to your phone. And then within seconds, you get that answer. So your phone is just the middleman in this situation. All the work actually happens in that data center. And because these computers need to continually be on to respond to requests from across the world, they are typically on all day. And think about your computer or your desktop working non-stop. At some point, it gets very hot and would want to shut down. That is the same thing that happens here. Data centers have always existed. They are not new. Banks and schools and companies have always had data centers. Like it could be a room filled with computers that could process information, but at a very small scale. And those data centers would typically handle things like online shopping, websites, emails, and social media. But then as technology started to advance with the rise of AI, there's a lot of more work that needs to be done. So then back to our original question. How does AI use water? Well, when all these computers are working around the clock non-stop, electricity flows through them and they produce heat. So unlike your computers and your phone, that heat in the center is so extreme that this equipment needs to get cooled down. If not, it will not perform. And that is what the water is being used for. So how much water does it actually need to cool down? Well, some facilities use traditional air cooling while others use water-based cooling systems or liquid or technologies designed for more powerful AI chips. The amount of water used varies widely depending on the size of the facility, its location, and the type of cooling system that it requires. But some very large data centers could use millions of gallons of water a day. A study that was done in 2023 estimated that generating between 10 and 15 medium-sized responses in ChatGPT could consume about 500 milliliters of water. That accounts for both the water that is required to produce the electricity for the data center, and water used to cool down the data center. That's half a liter of water, which may not sound like so much water until you consider how many millions of people use AI across the globe. A separate study conducted by the International Energy Agency estimated that in 2023, data centers around the world consumed about 140 billion liters of water just for cooling. That's about 56,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. More than half of the world's surface is covered in water. So what's the big deal there if AI data centers are actually using so much water? Well, that is because most of this water is salt water in the ocean, and it cannot be used for drinking, farming, or most industrial work without an expensive process called desalination. So untreated water can also damage the sensitive computers equipment inside data centers. So because of that, data centers are typically pulling water from local municipal sources or freshwater sources like rivers, lakes, and groundwaters. So the same source used for drinking, farming, and other everyday activity is now also being used for these data centers. So, and they use a lot of water. It is competing with the local community for the same supply. Another big question is what happens to the water once it is used for cooling in these data centers? Well, it either becomes water vapor, or it gets returned after treatment, or it is also reused in the cooling system. The biggest concern is the portion that evaporates, because once it does, it's no longer immediately available. So if your water evaporates into the sky, it might take rain for you to bring it back again. So we have AI competing with local water supplies in various communities. So I want to know, with everything you've learned from today's episode, is it going to change how you use AI? Will this impact your relationship with AI? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you learned something new today. Have a good day. Bye.